letter that was sent out to over 200 families concerning the accusations of the McMartin Preschool. The letter asks the parents if their children had been touched inappropriately by Ray Bucky or any of the other employees of the school. I will have more news as the story develops. Reporting for KABC7, this is Wayne Satz. The McMartin trial was getting more and more exposure as time went by. I wasn't quite sure what to think about it. The preschool was just up the road from the apartment complex that I run. I had never seen anything out of the ordinary. Then again, I don't have a child, so I couldn't be sure. The only thing that I was sure of was taking care of the Shepherd's Home apartment complex. Being the landlord, I had a huge responsibility to upkeep and make it safe for tenants. Just the other day, I had 3 people move into apartment 36. Sarah is an elementary school teacher who was absolutely devastated when she heard about the McMartin incident. Her husband Patrick is an insurance agent for State Farm. The quiet one is Sarah's sister named Elizabeth. She keeps to herself, and I'm not quite sure what she does. As I turned the TV off and started reading the newspaper, I read a headline that said lumber theft from a local lumberyard. The lumberyard had had a run of ongoing thefts. 2x4s and pallets were the biggest items stolen. They weren't quite sure who kept stealing them, but they were hoping to resolve it rather quickly. Reading the article with my glasses down at the tip of my nose and my coffee slightly too cold to enjoy, I folded up the newspaper and walked through my apartment door, which led straight to the office. Living in apartment 1 has its perks. The commute to work is pretty quick. As I got to the front desk of the office, I saw Christina and her son Cooper walking through the main lobby on their way to school. Right as I got to the desk, Cooper looked up and pointed at me. "Dick," was all he could say before giggling uncontrollably. Christina swatted him in the back of the head. She once again apologized to me because this is an everyday occurrence Monday through Friday. At first I took offense to it, but now I am just numb to the name calling. Cooper isn't the only one that calls me by that name. Any person under the age of 25 does practically. I just sighed and moved on with my day. As I began sorting through messages that the tenants had sent me about repairs, strange occurrences, or anything else that needed my attention, I started to hear the click-clacking of heels on the floor. I looked up to see Sarah wearing a beautiful navy blue and white sundress with a pair of navy heels to match. She had her glasses on and her red hair in a bun. She smiled and waved at me as she was on her way to school. Her husband Patrick was with her, their hands locked together. He was wearing a light brown suit with a navy tie that matched Sarah's dress. They seemed like such a cute couple, and I often wondered if I could have had something like that if I didn't put my work before my personal life. As the day went by, I did my typical routine of tightening faucets, removing mouse traps from the janitorial closet that were full of dead mice, and heating up a frozen dinner in the dinky little microwave I have in the office. I ate my Salisbury steak, and just as I was about to finish, I got a call on the office phone. "Richard, it's Elizabeth in 36. She started the phone conversation, and if she didn't tell me her name, I couldn't have identified her because I'm not used to hearing her voice. She went on, "I'm sorry to bother you, but the people above me are getting into a fight. I can hear them throwing things and yelling at each other." She seemed scared but embarrassed at the same time. I told her not to worry and that I would investigate. Usually when it comes to things going on in the apartment complex, I like to take care of it myself before I get law enforcement involved. I like to think I can get things resolved without blowing it out of proportion. I gathered my keys and walked up the stone steps to apartment 136. Elizabeth was right. I could hear the voices get louder the closer I got to the door. I knocked, but it was drowned out by the yelling. I did the next best thing and used my key to enter with probable cause. When I got in, it had looked like a tornado went through 136. Drawers were out of place, laundry scattered everywhere, and fresh holes were now in the walls of the complex. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted in anger. The fighting couple ceased their yelling and stared at me. "This bitch is hiding my baseball bat I had signed by Fernando Valenzuela." He shouted at me even though I was right next to him. I did not, his wife piped in with a rebuttal. Yes, you did. I bet you think I'm going to use it on you or some shit. He instantly yelled back at her, pointing his finger towards her face. Without hesitation, she bit his finger and growled like a possessed chihuahua. He started screaming as blood seeped out of her mouth. I quickly ran towards them and told her to release his finger. She did as she spat blood in his face. You crazy bitch. I'm going to need stitches, he shouted at her while holding his finger in his hand. All right, that's it. I began. You two are officially kicked out of here. Get the hell out of my complex or I'll call the police, you fucking psychos. They both were in shock as I left the apartment while slamming the door on my way out. I thought to myself that I'd give them until the end of the day to get out. I went down the steps and there was Elizabeth standing outside of her apartment. She was shaking and smoking a cigarette. She shot me a glance as she exhaled a puff of smoke. I'm so sorry, Richard, she said. Don't be. I started. You just got rid of a problem. You're better than pest control. I grinned as she smiled back at me. Thanks, I do what I can, she said as she crushed out her cigarette with her shoe. She proceeded to walk back into her apartment. Luckily, that couple did leave when I told them to. After they left, things remained pretty quiet around the apartment complex. Every day I would see Cooper and he would tell me the same thing. I would fix what needed to be fixed. I would eat the same frozen Salisbury steak dinner every day, and the McMartin trial started gaining more and more traction, even going nationwide in its coverage. I just hated the fact that our community was now under the microscope of something so heinous. I still didn't know what to think of it. One evening as I was doing my final rounds for the day, I noticed Sarah, Patrick, and Elizabeth sitting around the pool at one of the wooden picnic tables. They were enjoying some Kentucky Fried Chicken. As I walked past, Sarah noticed me and waved me over. Hey Richard, we got too much food tonight and we were wondering if you would join us for dinner. Even though another frozen meal was enticing, I took her up on her offer. I loaded up with all the sides, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, corn, and a biscuit to go with my 2 pieces of fried chicken. It tasted so good in comparison to my usual dinner. I thanked her for her generosity as I cleaned the table myself. Before I had the chance to leave, Patrick stopped me. Hey Richard, how much are you paying for insurance for this place? I had to remember that he worked at State Farm as I giggled and told him that I was paying a fair amount, though I appreciated his concern. I thanked them again for the food as I said goodnight to them. I was so happy to have tenants like them, especially compared to the ones that were in 136. These 3 were a breath of fresh air. Another few days went by without a hitch. I finally was able to patch up all of the holes in apartment 136 and get it cleaned up for a newly married couple looking to rent the place. It took a lot of work and elbow grease, but I got it looking brand new. After giving them the grand tour, they embraced with a hug and a kiss and were happy to take it. The husband looked at me and said, "You know, Dick, you have the best rent rate in town. $600 a month is a steal for a place like this." I informed him that my name was Richard. "Oh my gosh, Mr. Lamb, I'm so sorry," he said with panic in his eyes. I assured him it was fine. With a handshake, I told them to meet me in the office so that I could draw up the paperwork on my typewriter. The next morning, I received another call in the office. It was Elizabeth again. "Hey Richard, I'm sorry that I keep calling you with bad news, but we have a faucet leak in the kitchen. Is there any way you can come by quickly to take a look?" She sounded desperate and a little embarrassed. It seemed to be her MO. I obliged and told her that it was no big deal and I would be there in a few minutes. I grabbed my keys and a wrench and walked happily to 36. When I got to the door, I knocked before entering. What I saw gave me instant chills and took my breath away. All of the windows were blacked out, and there was a pentagram spray painted in the middle of the floor with candles lit around it. Before I could even ask Elizabeth what the hell was going on, I felt a crack in the back of my head before blacking out. When I came to, I saw 3 silhouettes standing over me. I tried to get up, but my arms and legs were tied. When I looked around, there were 4 2x4 wooden planks and I was laying on 4 wooden pallets. I looked up to see Sarah, Patrick, and Elizabeth all wearing black outfits, the women with black lipstick. Elizabeth clicked her heels towards me and bent down. "Talk about morning wood, huh, Dick?" she said before laughing maniacally. "Release me at once," I said to them with authority. Elizabeth shook her head and started clicking her tongue. "That may work on couples having a domestic dispute, but it won't work on me." I looked over at Patrick, who stood smiling with a baseball bat in his hands. The signature on the barrel looked familiar. It was the bat that the man in apartment 136 said was missing. Patrick must have broken into the apartment and taken it, just like he did with the lumber yard. I put the pieces together. "You see, Dick," Patrick began speaking, "we appreciate the affordable housing that you have allowed us, but it did not deter us from our final mission," he stated as he was tapping the bat in his palm. "What the fuck are you talking about?" I said with fear and anger in my voice. "We have to sacrifice you, Lucifer," Elizabeth said shyly. Even her true nature showed who she really was. Sarah began strutting over to Elizabeth as she put her arm around her waist. She embraced Elizabeth with a kiss on the lips, and after their black lipstick smeared together, she looked at me. "Elizabeth is right. We have to please our master. With a last name like Lamb, we knew that you would be perfect for the sacrifice," Sarah said as she brandished a knife from the back of her pants. Patrick walked over to the coffee table and grabbed a black book. He opened it and began reading a passage. He cleared his throat. "O dark Lord, we come to you with this sacrifice. Let our cup runneth over, and may you be pleased with what we have brought you today. Let our fortunes continue and our loyalty grow. We say this in your name. Mima." As soon as Patrick finished speaking, Sarah took the knife and ran it across my throat. With a deep cut, I began to panic and gasp for air. All I could do was choke and flail like a fish out of water. I couldn't believe that this is how it ended for me. The very thing that I made a priority was my downfall. The real satanic panic was right here, not at some preschool. The last thing I saw before my death was Patrick laughing as he looked above, while Sarah and Elizabeth smeared my blood all over each other's bodies and began removing each other's clothes.
I heard my phone ping in my pocket. I took it out and saw that I had a text from my mom. What she texted me brought a smile to my face. "Hey Zack Attack, I can't express how proud I am of you and how much I miss you. I made you a care package full of baked goods, toiletries, and a couple of DVDs your dad convinced me desperately that you needed. One is a copy of the movie Saw, and the other is the 6 DVD collection of Scream. I have the tracking number down below for you. We love you. Even though I moved 5 hours away, I still feel like my parents are on the other side of the world. I got accepted into the University of New Hampshire on a full ride scholarship. I read an article saying it's the safest college town in the country, which Mom approved of. I was able to work my ass off for 6 months to afford an apartment like this. It's walking distance from campus, and it's also near a bunch of restaurants and the movie theater. One thing I'm going to miss is going to see a movie with my dad every week. He would always take me on Tuesdays because it was $5 for each of us to go. I hope to keep that tradition alive by going every Tuesday. I don't really have much in the apartment, yet except for furniture that I found on Facebook Marketplace, a can opener, Wi-Fi, and a smart TV with my PS5 connected to it. Dad insisted that I bring a can opener with me, despite me not having any cans to open. Mom was also generous enough to buy me a MacBook for a graduation present. As I looked at the tracking number, it told me that my package should arrive by Friday evening. Considering the fact that it was Monday, I had to wait the whole week in order to taste my mom's homemade chocolate chip cookies. It was the worst waiting game I think I will ever play. I decided to take a shower and get some sleep before going to my class in the morning. I start a brand new chapter of my life tomorrow morning. I texted Mom back that I was thankful for the gifts, that I was going to sleep, and how much I loved her. The next morning I got up and went to all of my classes while eating some lunch in between. The first day was great so far. I liked all of my professors, and I was really glad that I was able to get a Tuesday and Thursday class schedule. However, I can't lie. I was kind of distracted by the movie I was going to watch tonight. Considering Dad and I had seen every single one of them together in some form or fashion, I decided to go watch Scream 7 at the 10:45 showing. After my final class for the day, I went home, did some homework to get ahead, and made myself a light dinner. I wanted to save room for a giant tub of popcorn when I got to my seat. That was another part of the tradition, to not eat a big dinner and gorge on the popcorn. Sometimes if Dad would lose interest during the movie, he would go out to the lobby and get it refilled so that we could enjoy some more. It would also be great because he would get our Dr. Peppers refilled in the process. Though I was going to miss him on this endeavor, I was excited to keep the tradition alive. As I walked through the double doors of the theater, I was instantly hit by the smell of popcorn along with hundreds of people chattering. This was my sanctuary. I walked up to the concession counter and asked for the biggest popcorn they had along with the biggest Dr. Pepper they had. I showed my ticket to the ticket taker and I was on my way. I always tried to grab a seat on the top row in the center. However, the two center seats were taken and I had to settle for a little bit closer to the left. I knew it was going to feel a little off, but I wasn't going to let it affect my viewing pleasure. As I climbed up the steps to the very top and veered around the corner to the aisle, a little boy was running loose in the theater, and as I dodged to avoid him, I tipped my Dr. Pepper over on a man sitting in one of the center seats. He was an older, bald man in a leather jacket. His date, who looked old enough to be his granddaughter, started laughing and taking pictures of him on Snapchat. After I apologized profusely multiple times, he just sat there in silence and stared at me. After I used some of my napkins to get him cleaned up a bit, that still wasn't enough. He was still angrily staring at me, silent and motionless. I apologized one more time and made my way to my seat as the previews started to play. I ate a little bit of my popcorn and glanced over to my right to see the man still staring at me. His date was on her phone texting with her big shiny pink lips illuminating off of the screen. Every few minutes I would look back over and it would be the same scene, him staring and her texting, over and over and over throughout the entire film. I barely touched my popcorn or my drink because I felt that uneasy about it. Even after the credits started rolling, I got up and left, but he was still sitting there as his head moved in the direction I was walking. He was like a mounted deer on the wall that you swear has eyes that follow you. I got out of the theater as quickly as I could like it was on fire. However, when I was driving off, I looked in my rearview mirror and he was standing right there in the parking lot, still staring. A chill ran down my spine as I drove home. I didn't sleep very well that night. I just kept picturing myself looking out of my apartment window and him standing in the courtyard staring back up at me. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was his face and the echoing laughter from his date. The next morning, I drank double the amount of coffee that I usually do and started working on my homework. I was paranoid and expected a knock at the door all day. Every footstep I heard in the hallway, it was him. Every cough or rustling around, it was him. Paranoia had the best of me that day. It went on like this for a couple of days before I eventually eased up and started enjoying life again. My mom had texted me that the care package should be arriving any moment today. It was Friday, and I was hoping to enjoy my weekend with some baked goods and a horror movie marathon. I was at my kitchen table doing homework and listening to a playlist on my Spotify. I kept it at a reasonable volume because I didn't want to disturb any of my neighbors. I kept the Bluetooth speaker fairly close to me so that the sound would amplify. Just as I was about to finish my creative writing paper, I heard a knock at the door. I was so excited that the care package was there as I shot up out of my chair. When I got to the door, I was met with a fist square into my face. As I stumbled backwards and fell onto the floor, I opened my eyes to see a man dressed in all black wearing a ghost face mask. All I could do was crawl backwards away from him as I hit one of the chairs of the table. He briskly walked towards me as he turned up my Bluetooth speaker to max volume. He threw me around a bit and kicked me in the ribs multiple times. As I tried to get up and run away, he grabbed me by the back of my shirt and threw me toward the kitchen sink. All of a sudden, I started hearing a grinding noise. He had turned on my garbage disposal. He took my dominant hand and placed it in the disposal. When I tell you it was agonizing, that would be the understatement of the year. My screams were softened by the loud music pumping through my apartment. Blood splattered everywhere as he pulled my hand out of the disposal and threw me on the ground. Standing over me, he took the ghost face mask off. It was the guy from the movie theater, and he looked just as pissed off as he did on Tuesday night. He crouched down towards me and said, "Oops, I'm sorry, that was really clumsy of me. My name is William Duran. Now that you've seen my face and know my name, I would advise you to not say a word to anyone. If you do, I'll come back and finish the job. Got it?" He said that to me, seething through his teeth with veins bulging out of his forehead and neck. I just shook my head in agreement. "Good," he said as he pulled his cell phone out of his pocket. He did 3 taps on the screen and put the phone up to his ear. "Hello, 911. I believe something bad has happened in apartment 12 at the Hargrove Ranch Apartments." I heard screaming over loud music. "My name? Do you want my name?" "Well, it's," he said as he broke his phone in half. He looked over at me once again and began speaking. "Help is on the way, and I pray for your sake that you never see my face ever again," he said as he stomped towards the door. As he got to the outside of it, he looked down. "Hey champ, you got a package." After saying that, he laughed and walked away. After laying on the ground in a puddle of my own blood for a few minutes, EMTs rushed in and put me in the back of an ambulance. I was rushed to the closest hospital and immediately went into surgery to stop the bleeding. I don't remember much of it because I was weaving in and out of consciousness during the procedure. When I woke up, the first face I saw was my mom's. Her face was beet red and tears were smearing her makeup. She was happy that I was alive. I looked over and saw my dad crying just the same. From the room's open door, I could see a police officer waiting outside. When he noticed I was awake, he walked in and started questioning me about the incident. He asked me what happened, and I mostly told him the truth. I told him that a guy dressed in all black wearing a ghost face mask came in and assaulted me and ran my hand through my garbage disposal. I told him I didn't see his face and that I was new in town and didn't have time to make enemies yet. The officer chalked it up to random act of violence, gave me his card, and told me to call him if I thought of anything else. I swore to God I wasn't going to say another word to anybody, not even my parents, about who he was. I was going to take that to my grave. The worst part was that this was supposed to be the safest college town in the country, and I still managed to get assaulted in my own apartment, no less.
Mom, this place is so boring. Why the hell did we have to move here? My brother Wyatt yelled at my mom over loud music in his headphones. Wyatt, your father was relocated here for a business opportunity. Also, you watch your mouth. Mom responded, pointing a finger at Wyatt. I really didn't like being here either. I just kept my mouth shut and began eating my Eggo waffles. We used to live in Newark, New Jersey, but Dad was relocated to Lawrence, Kansas. It's flat, boring, and being the new kid in town during the summer, I had no friends. "Alex," Mom said excitedly at me. "I saw that the park had a basketball hoop. Maybe you and your brother could go shoot some hoops this afternoon." For as long as I can remember, Mom has always tried to get me and Wyatt to bond and do things together. I was all for it, but Wyatt, being my older brother, most of the time wanted nothing to do with me. He always thought I cramped his style, his words not mine. "That sounds great, Mom. Could you stop by the store and grab a basketball?" I don't think my basketball made it during the move. I responded to her with a smile on my face. She just nodded at me and said that she would pick one up today when she went grocery shopping. After eating breakfast, I went into my bedroom. My brother and I had to share one, which I was excited about, but Wyatt not so much. I still had some unpacking to do and started putting clothes in the drawer inside the closet. I wasn't sure why, but the closet temperature was way colder than any place in the house. I told myself that when it gets really hot this summer, I'll just hang out in the closet, as I felt accomplishment because I emptied another box full of clothes. I decided to celebrate by spending the rest of my morning drawing. Wyatt just hung out in the living room and blasted his music in his headphones and played on his tablet. Mom returned from grocery shopping and had a brand new basketball with my name on it. She bounced it a couple of times and crossed it between her legs. It was actually kind of impressive. She just giggled and handed it to me with the basketball. I walked up to Wyatt and tapped him on the shoulder. He looked up at me in a rage and tore off his headphones. "What the fuck do you want?" he said to me. "Language, young man." Mom shouted from the kitchen. I looked at him and presented the basketball in front of my face. "Mom says there's a basketball court at the park across the street. I was wondering if you wanted to go shoot some hoops with me." I said with a smile on my face, "No way, the park is a public place. I wouldn't be caught dead with you." Wyatt said to me as he popped his headphones back on and turned the music up. All I could do was exhale and walk away. A couple of years ago, he would have been all for it. But since he's gotten older and started having interest in girls and rock music, he just brushes me off and doesn't want to do anything with me anymore. Dad tells me that's just how teenage boys are and not to take offense to it. I told Mom I was going to the park alone to shoot some hoops. She could see the park from the kitchen window and said that she was going to keep an eye on me while she was prepping dinner. I walked across the street and there was a group of kids already shooting hoops. I asked if I could join and they just laughed at me. One of them started talking and said, "Let's get out of here, guys. I know where my dad hides his fireworks stash." They all left me alone on the basketball court. After they left, I started practicing free throws and then eventually three-pointers and lastly half-court shots. Those I wasn't very good at, but I still practiced them anyway, after doing that for about an hour. Mom opened the kitchen window and told me that Dad was going to be home soon and that dinner was almost ready. I shot one more half-court shot and acted like it was a buzzer beater, but it just bounced off the rim and didn't go in. I let out a sad sigh, grabbed a ball, and went home. I went into the bathroom and washed my hands before dinner. I sat at the round dinner table and waited for Mom to bring the meatloaf and all of the sides. Dad came home shortly and embraced Mom with a kiss on the lips, but at the last second she turned, and he gave her a peck on the cheek. She swooped around him and placed the macaroni and cheese on the table. She then went into the living room and shouted at Wyatt that dinner was ready. He just rolled his eyes and walked to the table. It was great seeing Dad for the first time today. He is always gone before I even wake up in the mornings. Back in New Jersey, he would have breakfast with us. But with this new job, he practically works 12 hours a day. By the time he gets home, he's exhausted, but he still wants to hear about my day. I told him I almost made a half-court shot today, and he was really excited and proud of me for practicing. He's told me multiple times that I'm going to be a Laker and win multiple championships. I always just laugh and sarcastically agree with him. After dinner was over, Wyatt and I are in charge of doing the dishes. Well, I should say, I do the dishes. I'm supposed to dry, and Wyatt is supposed to wash. He's told me multiple times that I'm so good at washing the dishes that he doesn't need help, so while Mom is getting ready for bed, he goes back to the living room and starts playing on his tablet again. This is a routine he's had even before the move. After I do the dishes, I get ready for bed as well, since Wyatt and I share a room. I'm usually the first to go to sleep because Wyatt likes to stay up late. However, tonight, Wyatt got busted by Dad for not helping me with the dishes, and he was told to go straight to bed. Wyatt was annoyed as he popped in his headphones because he likes to fall asleep to music. He likes to be different, and this is the way that he shows it. I say a little prayer to myself before drifting off to sleep. In the middle of the night, I wake up to the sounds of whispering. I figured it was Mom and Dad, or something coming from Wyatt's headphones. I can't quite understand what is said as I go back to sleep. It happened a couple of more times that night with no success as to what the voices were saying. The next morning, over my waffles, I asked Wyatt what he was listening to last night. He said it was the new Black Veil Brides album Vindicate. I told him I heard a voice a few times last night. He rolled his eyes and informed me that the lead singer Andy Biersack speaks on the opening track. Case closed, I guess. I went back to the park with the same result. The kids left the second I got there, and I started practicing again. Every day, I get a little bit closer with my half-court shot. I just know I'm going to sink it one of these days. Mom called me in for dinner as Dad pulled up to the apartment. "Hey, kiddo," he said as he patted me on the head. "How did it go today?" He asked. "I almost got it in today. I'm close, Dad." He just smiled at me and told me that he believes that I can. He's been acting a little strange since we moved here. I could see a little bit of sadness in his eyes, but I can't figure out why. That never stopped him from still being a supportive dad. Later that night after dinner, Wyatt did help me with the dishes as Mom sat at the kitchen table and watched. Wyatt looked extra pissed tonight because he got caught yesterday. I got a little bit of joy from it, watching him grimace and dry heave. He hated doing the dishes. I was happy to do them tonight. I went to sleep pretty easily because it was an actual good day for me. However, in the middle of the night, I started hearing whispering again. When I looked over at Wyatt, he was sound asleep with no music. I guess his phone had died or something. Except tonight, the whispers were clear. I could clearly hear them say, "Alex," over and over again. My name was being repeated, even with the covers all the way up to my chin. I still was freezing cold with the shiver that ran up my spine. Every few seconds my name was said. I looked at the clock and said 3:33 a.m. I heard Wyatt say something about the witching hour, and I was right in the middle of it. I just closed my eyes and said a prayer as the voices stopped. When I looked at the clock, it was 3:34 a.m. I was terrified to go back to sleep. The next morning, I practically fell asleep in my waffles. Mom asked me if I was okay, and I told her that I was so sore from shooting hoops, so I didn't get much sleep. She handed me a Tylenol and told me to take it easy today and not worry about shooting hoops. I was a little bummed out because I was looking forward to it, but I didn't want to disappoint Mom, so I agreed that I would just hang out in the room today. If anybody would have walked into my brother in my room, you would have seen a huge difference between where I slept and where he slept. There was light blue paint on the wall, and my side was bare with nothing on it. However, Wyatt's side had pictures of his favorite bands and a poster of Jenna Ortega. He has a huge crush on her, and it shows. The closet is on my side of the room, and even during a hot day like today, I could still feel the chilling cold air coming from the crack of the door. I just sat in my bed and drew pictures of different NBA logos. I was working on the Toronto Raptors today, after being bored out of my mind all day long. I was actually looking forward to sleeping tonight. However, a few times throughout the day, I was reminded that I did hear that voice. I wasn't going to mention anything to my brother or my parents about it. But tonight, I was determined to figure out what was going on, even if it was all by myself. I acted like I was asleep for what felt like hours. I would open one eye and look at my clock on my bedside, and it read 3:32 a.m. Just one more minute, I thought to myself. Finally, at 3:33 a.m., the closet door creaked open, and all I saw was a silhouette of a head that had something pointy on either side of it. I also started seeing what looked like black claws emerging out of the darkness. It gripped the closet door and began to scrape. I had a flashlight in my drawer, so I grabbed it and shined it onto the closet door. All I could see was still a silhouette in black. However, I saw yellow eyes as it smiled, and its teeth were even yellower than that. It just smiled at me and said, "Alex," again and again and again. I jumped out of bed and woke up Wyatt. As I was shaking him awake, I told him that there was something in the closet. When we looked over, it was gone. He told me I had a bad dream and to go to sleep, or he was going to beat my ass. I, of course, did not sleep all night. The next morning, I was drained and jumpy. The waffles popped out of the toaster. I jumped. Mom sneezed, I jumped. Wyatt scooted his chair back so he could leave the table. You guessed it, I jumped. Mom asked me if I was okay, and I told her that I just had a bad dream. She told me to go take a nap for as long as I wanted, and if I was up for it, I could go play basketball today. I did take a nap, a 4-hour nap. I woke up with a little bit of energy. However, I was not in the mood to go shoot hoops. I came really close to asking Mom and Dad if I could sleep in their bed with them tonight, however. I talked myself out of it because I didn't want to seem like a baby. I just acted like I was going to sleep, but I didn't. Again, I waited until that horrible time. Tonight it reared its ugly head once again and began scraping on the closet door. Except this time it said more than just my name. It said, "Alex, ask your daddy how it felt to fuck Chrissy," with a demonic laugh. It disappeared into the darkness of the closet. The next day went off about the same. I was tired, took a 4-hour nap, and when it finally came time for dinner, I looked at my dad and asked, "Hey Dad, can I ask you a question?" After chewing on a bite from his burger, he put down and said, "Sure, Alex, go for it." I hesitated for a moment, but after fidgeting with a French fry and taking a deep breath, I asked, "How did it feel to fuck Chrissy?" My dad's eyes widened and my mom gasped. Dad shot out of his chair and very angrily said to me, "Alex, where did you hear such disgusting things? How did you know about the affair?" I had no idea it was an affair, but the creature confirmed that my dad cheated on my mom. Dad looked over at Mom and said, "Did you fucking tell him?" Mom shot back with a response, "No, Dale, I didn't tell him that you fucked your assistant and we had to move across the country so that you wouldn't get fired." If Mom could have shot laser beams out of her eyes, she definitely would have in that moment. Wyatt, looking up from his tablet for the first time all night, looked at my parents and said, "Wait, Dad had an affair?" He began to tear up as he ran away from the kitchen table and went straight to the room. Dad looked at me as he took a deep breath. "Alex, you are grounded, young man. I want you to go to your room and think about what you've done for the rest of the night." He was angry, but I could still see that sadness in his eyes again. When I got to the room, Wyatt was crying into his pillow. He heard me come in as he threw the pillow on the ground. He shot his eyes up at me and said, "Why do you have to open your big mouth?" He sniffled and wiped his eyes and continued, "I could have gone my entire life without knowing that Dad had an affair." I looked at him and explained that the creature in the closet told me about it. He got even angrier and shot words out of his mouth like a gun. "Stop making stuff up. You're doing this for attention, and it just makes you sound like a bigger baby than you already are." He popped his headphones in and went right to sleep. That night, I just laid in bed and cried. That's why Dad had the sadness in his eyes. That's why we had to move so far away from home. And that's why Mom has been kind of cold towards him as of late. I couldn't help but think that this was my fault. When I looked at the clock, it was 4:02 a.m. It was not there to visit tonight. The creature was probably too busy doing a victory lap. The next morning, Mom looked just as tired as I was. I apologized to her multiple times, but she shrugged me off every single time. "I love you, Alex, but right now I can't even look at you," she said as she threw the waffles down on the table and walked out. I was being punished for speaking the truth. I couldn't even eat the waffles as I tossed them in the trash before I went back to the room. When I got into the room, I looked at the closet door to inspect it. I could see 4 scrape marks where the creature had its claws. I opened the closet door and saw nothing else. These scratch marks proved that I wasn't making any of this up and that this creature actually exists. That night, I didn't see the creature. However, I heard it. It was saying more horrible things. "Alex, your brother doesn't love you. As a matter of fact, he hates you. You need to kill him to be happy again." I jammed a pillow between my ears and rolled over to my side. I waited a couple of minutes and checked to see if I could hear the voice again. It was gone. The next day, I decided to get out of the house and went to the court and shot baskets. When it came to me doing the half-court shot, I took a deep breath and threw it. It went right in. I had done it. I had finally made a half-court shot. A few minutes later, Dad came home. I ran up to him and told him that I made it. I made the half-court shot. He just looked down at me with a sad expression and walked into the house. Dinner that night was just as awkward as it was the night before. Nobody said anything. Nobody looked up, and everybody looked like zombies. Once again, I couldn't help but think that this was my fault. If I hadn't listened to what the creature said, my family would have been happy. Wyatt excused himself from the table and Dad followed, leaving just Mom and me in the kitchen before she finally left too. So I did the dishes by myself and went to bed. Right before I went to sleep, I walked up to Wyatt and tapped him on the shoulder. Wyatt tore off his headphones and said, "What the hell did the creature say now?" He said it sarcastically. But I went ahead and told him that the creature told me to kill him because Wyatt hated me. He had a scared look on his face and told me he didn't hate me. He was just willing to punch me in the face until I stopped breathing. That was comforting, I thought. As the night continued, I once again didn't get a visit from the creature. However, Wyatt shot out of bed and started screaming. He looked at the corner of his bedroom over by his desk. He looked scared, confused, and ready for combat. I looked over to the corner of the room and saw nothing. Wyatt looked at me. "You don't see her?" I looked at him puzzled and said, "Her?" He said that there was a woman dressed in all white standing in the corner of the bedroom. He went on to say that she told him that the creature in the closet was a demon and that we needed to get rid of it immediately. He said that the woman claimed to be an angel. She said that there was a totem in the floorboards of the closet. I was in shock because not only could I not see her, but now Wyatt was sounding like how I sounded the past few days, except he wasn't seeing a demon. He was seeing an angel that might put an end to this misery. Wyatt said that we should try to get some sleep tonight and come up with a game plan tomorrow. So that's exactly what we did. The next day, we acted like nothing was different, still mopey and quiet at the breakfast table, until Mom left the kitchen, and then we put together a plan. The plan was that after Mom and Dad had gone to sleep, we were going to investigate the floorboards of the closet. We also agreed that whatever the totem was, we were going to destroy. Wyatt had watched a lot of episodes of Supernatural and determined that we needed one of Mom's metal mixing bowls, rubbing alcohol, and Mom's candle lighter. We had a plan. I just prayed to God that it would work. After sneaking the supplies into the bedroom, we acted like we were going to sleep. After about an hour, we got up and went into the closet. Wyatt had also taken a claw hammer from the kitchen closet. When we looked down with our flashlights at the floor, we could see a little bit of discoloration making a perfect square in the wood. Wyatt carefully pried the floorboards up with the hammer claw. Inside was a shoebox. We took the shoebox out and opened it. There was something wrapped in a white cloth. Wyatt slowly unwrapped it to reveal a cross made out of sticks and covered in dry blood. It gave the illusion of an upside-down cross. Wyatt went back to his bed and grabbed the bowl, the rubbing alcohol, and the lighter. He gave me the totem to hold while he retrieved the items, just as he got back to the closet. The demon appeared out of nowhere and slapped the lighter out of Wyatt's hands. It flew across the room, all the way to his desk. I didn't hesitate as I ran to the lighter. I picked it up and realized I still had the totem in my hand. I slid the lighter back to Wyatt, and just as I was about to do the same with the totem, the demon appeared in front of me and began slashing at me. He got a couple of hits as he ripped through my pajamas. I took a step back, took a deep breath, and launched the totem like a basketball towards Wyatt. As it arched over the demon's head, it landed directly into the bowl. Wyatt doused it with the rubbing alcohol and lit it on fire. As soon as that happened, the demon let out a blood-curdling scream as it disintegrated into a black dust. Wyatt ran over to check on me to see if I was okay. After I told him that I was, he looked up to the corner of the room and smiled. All he could say was, "You're welcome and thank you." He told me that the angel had disappeared as well. She had thanked him for vanquishing the demon, and he thanked her for keeping me safe. All we could do was stare at each other and smile as we embraced each other in a hug.